Mose, what have you got for me today? Oh, let's have a look. Oh, look at that, 4 tappets out of a cat. Thanks a lot, Mose. I wonder what else he lays. So guys, yeah, we're back and the dust has settled now, literally and figuratively. But one of the things that I've got to look at now is one of the 1,000-mile checks on the Jeep is the air filter, and I'd swap this around for a paper filter, but I haven't looked at it since I fitted it actually. So I probably should have a peek in there and see what's going on. You can see that there was a lot of air filtering going on here because there's loads of dust all around it, but it's interesting to see what's going on inside it. So let's get it apart and have a look and see what the paper filter looks like inside. Well, dust and air has definitely been going inside there, guys. You can see here where it's all sucked the dust in, and you can see inside, possibly through the gaps there, that, yeah, maybe, there's a lot of dust in there as well. So let's get the bottom off and have a look and see what we can find here. So guys, this is what we've got inside then. So this is, looking at it now, it's actually a little bit gash, but anyway, it seems to have worked. So you've got the bowl at the bottom here where the oil would have gone and the filter element, okay? So when this is on, it sits on tight like that, and it's got a seal around here, okay? Now, because this filter element is slightly smaller than it needs to be, I need to have a seal here because the air's all around the edge here, and I want it to go through here and not up the centre because it goes through the centre and out to the engine, okay? So all I did is just epoxy an old lid on here and then just put a rubber spacer ring just to make sure that it was properly tight. So that sits in the bottom like that, and then you've got the filter, and then the filter itself's looking fine. There's no loads of crud in it, there's nothing on the inside. You know, there'd be dust collected on the bottom if there was. And then inside here is nice and clean, fortunately. We can see it's all clean and everything, that's good. Up the centre, importantly, is clean, so it doesn't look like dust being getting through. But then just to space it out then, because as I said, this filter is too small, so what you do is you get a spacer, and I just made one simply out of foam here. I know it looks a bit rubbishy. I think the centre hole is big enough to not cause any restrictions or anything like that, but you can see there with a discoloration where it's been sucking air through. But yeah, you've got a spacer in there, although it looks a bit rubbish. It fills up the extra space there, and you can see it's been pushed hard against there, so there's been no air leaks around the side there. So yeah, and the centre looks nice, there's no dust or any crud or anything like that, so it seems to have done pretty well, really. I mean, it's obviously a bit of a rubbishy looking system, but it works. Okay, I might change it at some point, but it seems to have been doing a good job keeping dust out, which is the important thing. It may not be pretty, but you can't see it, and it's doing a good job. So we'll leave that as it is. I might improve it in the future. It smells amazing. So this is what makes the IAD 4008 dust proof, is this little dude here. Yeah, it's looking pretty undusty in there. That's looking nice. So yeah, this bit, it's got a little felt in here, which is the dust-proof portion, I think, and this one is quite worn on this. I mean, I don't know how you could replace that. You could probably pull it out and stick a new bit of felt in there, actually, but you can see there's quite a lot of gap here, actually, so it's not very dust-proof anymore, really, if it was dust-proof once, but it doesn't seem to have allowed anything through, so that seems to work pretty well. So let's line him back up. Put my rotor back on. There we go. Yeah, that seems to work pretty well. I'd say appears to be mostly dust-proof, guys. Got the block out, guys, then, so we'll clean up the outside then and get rid of some all this nastiness and old paint, ready to take out the core plug so that we can put it in the electrolysis bath then and get this actually cleaned up so we can get it out to the machinist then. So let's get to it. Yeah guys, we've had to give up cleaning, unfortunately. We've worked our way through these discs already, and look at that. Yeah, it's eating that. It's a time-consuming job cleaning these things up, you know. It's not easy. I mean, you could blast it, but then you've got blasting bits. You know, you might end up with a bit of grit inside a alleyway you can't get out, whereas at least you're not going to have any grit with this. You just got to clean it out. And it does work. It's just takes a long time. You could use one of those sort of needle guns as well, I suppose. That might work well. But yeah, this doesn't work too badly. It just takes time and effort, really. So I think we're getting somewhere. But let's try and get these oil gallery plugs out then. These got to come out to clean through, to make sure it's all cleaned properly. Not that easy to do, so let's see if we can put a bit of heat, a bit of WD, and see if they'll think about moving. I'm going to be careful with them because I don't want to round them off and destroy them. So we'll take it easy and see how we get on with it. We put really little force through that, guys, and it's starting to round the edges off already there, which is really annoying. So I have to give up with that before we damage it, and have to think about how we're going to get them out then. So back to the drawing board with that. I think we're done with the engine for today. Right guys, quick move on to some other things then. So we're looking at the engine and we're looking at some of these camshaft and tappet components here. So what we've got here is this guy is the timing gear off the MB engine, and this is off my other GPW engine. This was replaced as well, okay? So we're just going to look at the problems you can have with replacing just single components in a system which has been working together, okay? Because that might sound like a good idea. So you're thinking, well, if I've got my engine, it's running okay, we're going to go and look at the tolerances and make sure everything's okay, and then let's just swap out the bits which are out of tolerance. That sounds like a good idea, doesn't it? You've got a tech manual which tells you your tolerance limits, so you know you should be able to just swap things out and put new bits in. But unfortunately it doesn't really work like that, and it becomes a bit of a conundrum about how you restore an engine, because you don't want to be replacing everything, you know, for the sake of it, but at the same time you have to be careful just swapping little bits over and not changing the whole thing, because we've got wear on the components, okay, and these things have been together for years and run for thousands of miles together, and they've worn into particular patterns together, okay. So when things wear in patterns together, what you end up with is that they mate really nicely, and the engine might run quietly even though the components are worn, okay, because they've both got high spots and low spots which they've worn into each other. So let's have a look at this gear here. This gear looks okay, but if you look very carefully at the teeth, see if we can zoom in, you should be able to see ridges cut around the edges of the teeth there, okay? Can you see how it's cut in on the teeth themselves? And what that is where the chain is worn into it. So this engine was probably running quite quietly, even though the chain has worn a groove into this, this gear, okay? So the engine was probably running quietly and quite nicely. Now if we just took this gear back in the engine and put it straight back in and just swap the chain over, we go, well, the chain's a bit worn out, so we'll just swap the chain. What will happen is this specific wear pattern on here, which this old chain has worn into it over many years, the high spots and low spots won't mate with the new high spots and the low spots on the new chain. And what you have is you have points of contact, you know, sharp points of contact where there weren't sharp points of contact before on this chain, and that'll cause the gear to wear quicker, and it'll also cause the new chain to wear quicker, and it'll probably be louder as well. So you'll put a new chain on it and you go, why is this louder? This doesn't make any sense. You know, it should be tighter, the tolerances should be better with this new chain. But the problem is, it's these wear patterns, these high spots, which are now contacting where they weren't previously contacting, and the fit of the parts is just not as good as it used to be. And what that causes is premature wear, noisy running, and the engine doesn't run as well. So let's move on to the next thing as well. So we've got the camshaft out of the engine, and the camshaft, in the tech manual, it says to inspect it for wear, and you want no ridges or rough spots or anything like that, high spots. Well, this seems okay. There's a slight high spot there where it hasn't been wearing as much, but otherwise there's no ridges on this. This is quite smooth and quite good. This camshaft is on the cusp of being usable. I'm unsure at the moment, guys. Okay, so we can see on the lobes, you going to zoom correctly? Yeah, you can see on the lobes, you can see the wear pattern there. You can just see how, where are we? Let's come in here. You can see how it wears on there. So the lobes have got a specific shape to rotate the tappets, okay? So when we have our tappet, let's see if we can do this. Yeah, guys, so here's a tappet fitted onto it. So you can see that the bottom of the tappet has actually got a dome shape to it, okay? There's a dome. And this dome wears, and they wear flat. And the reason for the dome is that we want the tappet to rotate in the engine. You can see that the camshaft as well also has a profile to it. And this is made to spin the tappet like this. So in the engine, it'll spin and rotate. Okay, so that's what we're looking for. Now, when the tappets are worn, they're flat on the bottom here. And if you put a new camshaft in with flat tappets, there's a really harsh contact point, okay, a new contact point, and it'll wear a groove into the tappet, okay. So you've got to be careful just replacing, putting a new camshaft in with old tappets. But we want that dome shape on the bottom of the tappet there to make sure that they rotate, okay. So that's what we need with this. This camshaft looks okay, but what have we got then? So our measurements, guys, this is what we turned up with, okay. So on the top is what we ended up with. You can see, and on the bottom is the requirement in the tech manual. So you can see some of them are okay. Well, they're all okay apart from the guy on the end here, so this guy. And he runs, this one runs actually inside the block, okay? There's no special bearing or anything like that, that runs inside the block. So I've got to decide whether I want to replace this camshaft or not, because I'm replacing all the tappets anyway. So if I'm going to use a worn camshaft with new tappets, are we going to get strange wear problems like I've just been talking about? You know, camshafts are not excessively expensive. It's a shame to not use, you know, good old parts, but we've just been talking about the problems with using worn parts with unworn parts. They wear quicker and they don't run as well. So for the price of a camshaft, and as I've said, we're going to run this engine properly and do it all properly, it's possibly not going to be using this camshaft, guys. Still undecided about that. Let me know what you think about it. But yeah, I think we might replace this camshaft. This is one of the worn tappets out of the MB engine, guys. You can see it's how the adjuster is worn on the end there. It's actually worn a complete profile into the end of it. So you can see if you swapped over, you know, use this again with new valve stems and without replacing these adjusters, you'd have all this wear here, which would wear differently. What if your new valve stem, when it came in, what if it wore, you know, on this side down here instead of it over here? So you'd have a high spot here and a low spot down here, and it would just wear on this bit, which would cut a groove into your valve stem. So you can see the difference and the problems of using worn parts here, and why that is unusable then. So guys, with this MB engine then, the tappets which came out of it on the bases, they were flat and they were undersized. So unfortunately they're not usable. So I'm going to replace all the tappets. So I got hold of some forward replacement tappets for it because that's what's available to me. And you can see they're coming out of the wax paper on the left there. And this is a half cleaned up one. And then this one was a loose forward tappet, which has got slightly different machining on the shank here. You can see, look at that. That goes all the way down, whereas these ones don't, which is interesting. So there's a slight difference in machining between them. They must come from different times in World War II. But an interesting thing is that these tappets, straight out of the grease paper, this one and this one, so they're two separate styles at a different time, they're coming out at 35 thousandths of an inch, okay, whereas the minimum is, according to the tech manual, is 45 to 40 thousandths of an inch. So, you know, using my calipers, my Mitutoyo calipers, which are pretty good and I've never had any issue with them, apparently they're all measuring slightly undersized, but they're from Ford at different times, so that's what they were coming to the engines, you know, this is what they were coming out at, straight out the factory, slightly undersized, which is weird according to my calipers. Again, it could just be a gauging error, I'm not sure, but that's what I'm getting with them. But I'm going to be using them anyway, so it's just an interesting thing there. I'm not sure what to make of it. But the one on the far right then, guys, is a 40 thousandths of an inch oversized tappet as well, a forward one. So if your block is worn out where the tappets run, you can get it machined oversized, and you can fit these 40 thousandths of an inch oversized tappets so that you can continue using the block, which is a neat feature there. So this one's a big tappet here, so you've got to make sure when you get tappets that they're the correct size, so always measure first before fitting. But on the bases of these you can see the machining marks there, so you can see the doming and everything. And when you've got tappets as well, we can sort of do it one-handed, but when you hold them together, when they're domed, you can rock them around because there's a dome on the base. So they sort of rock around, okay, so you can see that there's still a dome on them, whereas when they're flat, they just smack together and you can't get anything between them. But there you go, those are the tappets we'll be using, guys, in the engine. Just an interesting thing there. But that's it for today. I hope you enjoy that. I'll see you next time. Like and subscribe and enjoy. Cheers.